Differences and similarities. Fundamental niche and realized niche are two types of positions of the ecosystem occupied by a particular species. Fundamental niche refers to niche of an organism given that there are no limiting factors on the environment or resources the organism can use, while a realized niche refers to a niche a viable population of a species occupies in the presence of competitor species. This explains the basic difference between fundamental niche and realized niche. Fundamental niche is a type of theoretical niche, while a realized niche is where the species actually lives. In the fundamental niche, there is no environmental pressure. When pressure from predators or restricted resources develops, the species shifts to the realized niche. Sometimes, the fundamental niche can be of the same size as a realized niche. Depending on the rivals and predators present, the same species living in various areas may have different realized niches. Fundamental niche narrows when other organisms arrive, and there is competition for food and breeding partners, or when predators start hunting in the area. On the other hand, the organism will survive if it adapts to the new conditions of its realized niche. Both fundamental and realized niches can be wide or narrow. The term used for organisms that live in narrow niches because they thrive only in certain environmental conditions or eat a certain food is a specialist species. Whereas the term used for species that occupy wider niches and make use of a variety of resources and can live in many different environmental conditions is generalist species. Example: when a tadpole, which is an herbivore, undergoes metamorphosis into a carnivorous frog. Furthermore, the fundamental niche is large in size while the realized niche is small in size. There is no competition in a fundamental niche either for resources or predators, while a competition occurs for both resources and predators in a realized niche. This is an important difference between fundamental niche and realized niche. The realized niche may be smaller than the fundamental niche because of interspecific interactions, such as competition and predation. This has been explained by Joseph Connell's famous experiments. Two species of barnacles live in a stratified distribution in the intertidal region along the Scottish coast. Balanus is most concentrated in the lower intertidal area. Chamalis is most concentrated in the upper intertidal area. The free-swimming larva of each species can settle anywhere on the rocky shoreline, and presumably be able to grow to be an adult. Connell removed Chamalis from the upper area, and no Balanus replaced it. Therefore it was inferred that Balanus could not survive in an area that experienced so much desiccation due to low tides. Balanus's realized niche was the same as its fundamental niche. Then Connell removed Balanus from the lower area and Chamalis replaced it. It was inferred that Balanus was a more successful competitor in the lower intertidal zone. Thus the fundamental niche and realized niche for Chamalis were not the same. Its realized niche was smaller due to interspecific competition. Ecological equivalents. Organisms that occupy the same niche in different geographical regions are called ecological equivalents. For e.g., different types of grasses are found in various grasslands but are all primary producers. Similarly, kangaroos of Australia are ecological equivalents of antelopes of North America, as both are grazers. Niche width and overlap. Niche overlap indicates competition between two species for similar resources. Niche overlap occurs when two organismic units use the same resources or other environmental variables. A niche overlap occurs when two species are sharing resources with each other. Niche overlap refers to the partial or complete sharing of resources or other ecological factors, predators, foraging space, soil type, and so on by two or more species. For example, warblers in a woodlot might all feed on insects and thus overlap in their diets, or plants in a meadow might all overlap in their need for light. Niche overlap is an important concept in community ecology because it is expected to determine how many and which species can coexist in a community. Interest in niche began with the competitive exclusion principle, which states that two species using identical resources and/or environments cannot coexist. The concept of niche width or niche breadth refers essentially to the diversity of resource use shown by any one organism or group of organisms. Those resources used as restricted to a small portion of the available resource spectrum are considered to have narrow niches. Those which exploit a relatively diverse set of resources within the resource continuum are defined with broad niches. Methods of estimating population density of animals. Population density is population size in relation to some unit of space. It is generally assayed and expressed as the number of individuals, or the population biomass, per unit area or volume. For example, 200 trees per acre, 5 million diatoms per cubic meter of water, or 200 pounds of fish per acre of water surface. Many different techniques for measuring population density have been tried. The methods fall into several broad categories. 1. Total counts, sometimes possible with larger conspicuous organisms or with those which aggregate into colonies. 2. Sampling methods involving plots, quadrats, transects, or sampling devices of various sorts, by necessity often the most widely used. Recapture methods for animals in which a sample of population is captured, marked, and released, and proportion of marked individuals in a later sample used to determine total population. Zero with proper precautions and a knowledge of life history and population attributes, this can be a very good method. 4. Indirect methods involving signs, hunting, fishing, and trapping, take, food or oxygen consumption, etc. Total count method. Count all the organisms present in a population. Direct counting of populations, possible for few animals. Breeding colonies can be photographed then later counted. Examples: human pop census and trees in a given area. Transect or quadrat sampling. Counts along a known distance or in a known unit area. Small represents a subsample. Represents a subsample of a population. Herbal organisms such as plants are for very small and slow-moving organisms. Plots called quadrats may be used to determine population size and density. Each quadrat marks off an area of the same size, typically the square area within the habitat. Scientists usually estimate the populations of sessile or slow-moving organisms with the quadrat method. A quadrat is a square that encloses an area within a habitat. The area may be defined by staking it out with sticks and string, or using a square made of wood, plastic, or metal placed on the ground. The study usually includes several quadrat samples at random locations or along a transect in representative habitat. After they place the quadrats, researchers count the number of individuals that lie within the quadrat boundaries. The reside quadrat size and number of samples from the type of organism, its spatial distribution, and other factors. Multiple quadrat samples are performed throughout the habitat at several random locations, which ensures that the numbers recorded are representative for the habitat overall. And the data can be used to estimate the population size and population density within the entire habitat. The correct quadrat size ensures counts of enough individuals to get a sample representative of the entire habitat. Mark recapture methods. Capture individuals, mark them in some way, resample and examine the proportion of marked to unmarked individuals. Scientists typically use the mark and recapture technique for mobile organisms such as mammals, birds, or fish. Method: researchers capture animals and mark them with tags, bands, paint, body markings, or some other sign. The marked animals are then released back into their environment where they mix with the rest of the population. Later, a new sample is collected, including some individuals that are marked recaptures and some individuals that are unmarked. The ratio of marked to unmarked individuals allows scientists to calculate how many individuals are in the population as an estimate of total population size. This method assumes that the larger the population, the lower the percentage of tagged organisms that will be recaptured since they will have mixed with more untagged individuals. Example, using the mark recapture method. Let's say we want to find the size of a deer population. Suppose that we capture 80 deer, tag them, and release them back into the forest. After some time has passed allowing the marked deer to thoroughly mix with the rest of the population, we come back and capture another 100 deer. Out of these deer, we find that 20 are already marked. If 20 out of 100 deer are marked, this would suggest that marked deer which we know are 80 in number make up 20% of the population. Using this information, we can formulate the following relationship. This approach isn't always perfect. Some animals from the first catch may learn to avoid capture in the second round, inflating population estimates. Alternatively, the same animals may preferentially be red trapped, especially if a food reward is offered, resulting in an underestimate of population size. Also, some species may be harmed by the marking technique, reducing their survival. The approach also assumes that animals don't die, get born, leave, or enter the population during the period of the study. The mark and recapture method has limitations. Some animals from the first catch may learn to avoid capture in the second round. Such behavior would cause inflated population estimates. Alternatively, animals may preferentially be red trapped, especially if a food reward is offered, resulting in an underestimate of population size. Also, some species may be harmed by the marking technique, reducing their survival. A variety of other techniques have been developed, including the electronic tracking of animals tagged with radio transmitters and the use of data from commercial fishing and trapping operations to estimate the size and health of populations and communities. Concept of climax. Our stable community in a successional series, SARA, is a climax community. It is self-perpetuating and in equilibrium with the physical habitat. Presumably, in a climax community, in contrast to a developmental or other unstable community, there is no net annual accumulation of organic matter. That is, the annual production and import is balanced by the annual community consumption and export. Which is convenient, although somewhat arbitrary, to recognize 1, a single climatic climax which is in equilibrium with the general climate, and 2, a varying number of edaphic climaxes which are modified. For a given region, it is convenient, although somewhat arbitrary, to recognize 1, a single climatic climax which is in equilibrium with the general climate, and 2, a varying number of edaphic climaxes which are modified by local conditions of the substrate. Former is the theoretical community toward which all successional development in a given region is tending. It is realized where physical conditions of the substrate are not so extreme as to modify the effects of the prevailing regional climate. Succession ends in an edaphic climax where topography, soil, or water are such that the climatic climax cannot develop. Terminal and more or less stabilized community in succession that is able to establish some sort of equilibrium with the environmental conditions of that area was termed climax by Clements 1916. The subject of climax has been much controversial and is reviewed from time to time by many ecologists. According to Clements 1916, 1935, climax has the following 3 principal characteristics. Unity. Climax is a unit, an index of the climate of area. Life or growth forms of plants indicate the climate type. Unless all the species are not taken as an organized unit, climax would not indicate the climate. Stability. The form of climax community is more or less stable with the climate. This climax community cannot be replaced through competition by any other group of species. In other words, according to Clements, in a particular climate area there may develop climax communities only with a few characteristic dominant species. Origin and phylogenetic relations. Climax community is to be treated equivalent to an organism, like which it takes birth, grows and develops and becomes mature. In this organismic concept of climax community, Clements went to the extent of designating it a superorganism. In any climatic region, the developmental stages of the climax community have their own characteristics, which reflect the type of climate. Similar to the development of organism with changing age, climax communities have also simultaneously undergone changes with changing climate. Thus phylogenetic relations may be established between different climax communities of the world. According to the monoclimax idea, any region has only one climax toward which all communities are developing, however slowly. According to the polyclimax idea, it is unrealistic to assume that all community in a given climatic region will end up the same when conditions of physical habitat are by no means uniform. Nor are all habitats capable of being molded to a common level by the community within a reasonable length of time as measured in terms of the lifespan of man or of a few multiples thereof. Climatic climax is the theoretical constant against which observed conditions may be compared. These concepts can best be illustrated by a specific example. Topographic situations in southern Ontario and the stable biotic communities associated with the various physical situations. On level or moderately rolling areas where the soil is well drained but moist, a maple beech community, sugar maple and beech being the dominant plants, is found to be the terminal stage in succession. Since T-tilde's type of community is fault again and again in the region wherever land configuration and drainage are moderate, the maple beech community is judged to be the normal, unmodified climax of the region. Where the soil remains wetter or drier than normal, despite the action of communities, a somewhat different end community occurs. Still greater deviations from the climatic climax occur on steep south-facing slopes where the microclimate is warmer, or on north slopes and in deep ravines where the microclimate is colder. These latter climaxes often resemble climatic climaxes found farther south and north, respectively. The climatic climax where local climate and soils are normal, and various edaphic climaxes associated with different combinations of model-like climates and drainages. The hickory community on dry soil, for example, would, if given indefinite time, gradually increase the organic content of the soil and raise its moisture-holding properties, and thus eventually give way to the maple beech community. Actually, we do not know whether this would occur or not, since we can see little evidence of such change and since records of undisturbed areas have not been kept for the many human generations that probably would be required. In contrast, a maple beech community may develop in favorable situations in 200 years or less, even beginning from a plowed field. Starting with severe physical conditions, such as a steep slope or deep ravine, it seems likely that biotic communities would never be able to overcome the handicaps, and the climatic climax would not be realized. In any event, it is difficult to consider communities in such situations as edaphic climaxes which will remain quite stable in terms of man's lifespan, and probably until there is a change in the regional climate or a geological change in the substrate. In other words, the question of climatic and edaphic climaxes comes back to the point emphasized in the section on succession. The orderly process of which we define as ecological succession results from the interaction of the organisms themselves which produces conditions favorable for a new set of organisms until the final stage is reached. The more the physical substrate, the more difficult modification of environment becomes and the more likely that community development will stop, or at least slow down to an imperceptible crawl, without achieving an equilibrium condition with the regional climate. Land regions vary considerably in the percentage of area that is capable of supporting climatic climax communities. On the deep soils of the Central Plains, early settlers found a large proportion of the land covered with a climax grassland. In contrast, on the sandy, geologically young, lower coastal plain of the southeast, the climatic climax, a broad-leaved evergreen forest, was originally as rare as it is today. Most of the coastal plain is occupied by edaphic climaxes or their seral stages. Usually, species composition has been used as a criterion to determine if a given community is climax or not. It is sometimes difficult to determine if dominant species are maintaining the same average density level since species populations often fluctuate within certain limits. The nature of the community metabolisms is indicated by the PIR ratio, i.e., ratio of primary production and Conf1-ITY respiration, may also serve as an indicator of the degree of stability. The assumption is that a climax community should have a PIR ratio close to 1, but not enough data have been obtained to verify this. Man, of course, has much to say about the progress of succession and the achievement of climaxes. A stable community, which is not the climatic or edaphic climax for the given site, is maintained by man or his domestic animals. It may conveniently be designated as a disclimax equals disturbance climax. For example, overgrazing by stock may produce a desert community of creosote bushes, mesquite, and cactus where the local climate actually would allow a grassland to maintain itself. The desert community would be the disclimax, the grassland the climatic climax. In this case, the desert community is evidence of poor management by man, whereas the same desert community in a region with a true desert climate would be a natural condition. In certain topographic sites of the southeastern coastal plain, a stable long-leaf pine forest is maintained by periodic fires. Without fires, the succession proceeds to a broad-leaved forest. In this case, the disclimax is more valuable to man than the climatic climax. Tansley, 1935, who believed that climax is controlled by many and not unclimate factors. Accordingly, Tansley's concept became popularly known as polyclimax theory. Although agreed with the possible control of factors other than climate on climax, but he thought that these communities would sooner or later develop into climatic climax types. Consequently, with an attempt to accommodate these stages in his own hypothesis, Clements introduced in literature a number of new terms. These are as follows. The stage in succession just preceding the climatic climax community was called a subclimax. The community, which became stabilized at any of the seral stages of succession due to microclimate, or effects of factors of soil, fire, etc., was called a seroclimax. The climax disturbed climax was called the community which became more or less stabilized due to recurrent disturbance by man or other biotic factors, which prevent the establishment of climatic climax community in the area. At the same place, under similar climatic conditions, at smaller distances, due to differences in water and soil characters, there may develop different climax communities. Under such circumstances, Clements 1936 coined two more terms, preclimax. It is the forms lower than those in the expected climatic climax, which might develop in a habitat drier than that of the expected climatic climax, and postclimax, a strip of community with life forms higher than those in the expected climatic climax and which develops under more moist or colder habitats. As a result, followers of Clements coined a number of new terms. For instance, coclimax, superclimax, quasiclimax, paraclimax, anticlimax, conclimax, pinnaclimax, metaclimax, pseudoclimax, etc. The only way to come out of the jargons of Clements' terminology was the polyclimax theory, Tansley, 1935, 1939. There is evidence that even under primeval conditions it was difficult to find large areas of uniform vegetation. According to this theory, the climax stage may be controlled by any factor of the environment and not only by climate. Accordingly, the climax stage is to be named, depending upon the nature of the factor and stabilization. Thus, in addition to climatic climax, controlled by climate, there may develop edaphic climax, developed on an underdeveloped soil, due to edaphic effects, biotic climax, developed due to biotic disturbances. Psychologists categorization into anthropogenic climax due to man, grazing climax due to grazing effects, and zootic climax due to animals, topographic climax due to differences in topographic factors of mountains, hills, mounds, etc. And fire climax due to repeated effects of fire. Or the final stage of succession is called the climax or climax community. Clements, 1936, Shimwell, 1971. It is the final or stable community in a successional series. It is self-perpetuating in an equilibrium with the physical and biotic environment. Climax communities undergo changes in structure as a result of birth, death and growth processes in the community. There are following theories of the climax. 1. Monoclimax theory. According to the monoclimax theory of succession, Clements, 1936, every region has one climax community toward which all communities are developing. He believed that climate was the determining factor for vegetation and the climax of any area was solely a function of its climate. Various terms such as subclimax, disclimax, postclimax, and preclimax are used to describe the deviations from the climatically stabilized climax. These communities, controlled by topographic, edaphic, soil, or biotic factors, are regarded as exceptions by the supporters of the monoclimax view. The theory was advanced by Clements in 1916 and recognized only one climax whose characteristics are determined solely by climate, meaning climatic climax. The processes of succession and modification of environment overcome the effects of differences in topography, parent material of the soil and other factors. The whole area would be covered with uniform plant community. Communities other than the climax and related to it are recognized as subclimax, postclimax, and disclimax. 2. Polyclimax theory. This theory was proposed by Tansley, 1939, and later supported by Daubenmeier, 1966. The polyclimax theory of succession holds that many different types of vegetation as climax communities may be recognized in a given area. These will be climaxes, controlled by soil moisture, soil nutrients, activity of animals, and other factors. According to this theory, climate is only one of the several factors, any of which may have a controlling influence on the structure and stability of the climax. This allows many climaxes in a climate region and is, therefore, called the polyclimax theory. This theory was advanced by Tansley in 1935. It proposed that climax vegetation of a region consists of more than one vegetation climaxes controlled by soil moisture, soil nutrients, topography, slope exposure, fire, and animal activity. The difference between this theory and the monoclimax theory is largely a matter of emphasis on which factor is responsible for the stability of a climax. According to Krebs, 1994, the real difference between two theories lies in the time factor of measuring relative stability. The climate varies on an ecological time scale as well as on a geological time scale. Succession, in a sense, then, is continuous because we have variable vegetation approaching a variable climate. 3. Climax pattern theory. Whittaker 93 emphasized that a natural community is adapted to the whole pattern of environmental factors in which it exists. The major factors are genetic structure of each species, climate, site, soil, biotic factors, activity of animals, fire and wind, availability of plant and animal species, and chances of dispersal. According to this theory, climax communities are patterns of populations varying according to the total environment. There is thus no discrete number of climax communities, and no one factor determines the structure and stability of a climax community. This theory was proposed by Whittaker in 1953. The climax pattern theory recognizes a variety of climaxes governed by responses of species populations to biotic and abiotic conditions. According to this theory, the total environment of the ecosystem determines the composition, species structure and balance of a climax community. The environment includes the species' responses to moisture, temperature, and nutrients and their biotic relationships. Availability of flora and fauna to colonize the area, chance dispersal of seeds and animals, soils, climate and disturbance such as fur and wind. The nature of climax vegetation will change as an environment change. The climax community represents a pattern of populations that corresponds to a change with the pattern of environment. The central and most widespread community is the climatic climax. Whereas the monoclimax theory allows for only one climatic climax in a region and the polyclimax theory allows several climaxes, the climax pattern hypothesis allows a continuity of climax types varying gradually along environmental gradients and not clearly separable into discrete climax types. 4. Climax is vegetation. According to Egbert 1954, one can say that climaxes, in a broad sense, are nothing more than totality of vegetation. Itself he, thus, favors the study of vegetation, as it is, with careful observations to explain and interpret past, present, and future conditions of particular communities. We may conclude from these theories that the endpoint of succession is climax, which is in itself not completely stable. The climate of an area has overall control on the vegetation, but within each of the broad climatic zones there are many modifications caused by soil, topography, and animals which lead to many climax situations. Climax communities do not necessarily represent a halt to successional change. Types of climax. Climatic climax. There is only a single climax and the development of climax community is controlled by the climate of the region. It is termed as climatic climax. For example, development of Maple Beach climax community over the moist soil. Climatic climax is theoretical and develops where physical conditions of the substrates are not so extreme as to modify the effects of the prevailing regional climate. Edaphic climate. When there is more than one climax community in the region, modified by local conditions of the substrates such as soil moisture, soil nutrients, topography, slope exposure, fire and animal activity, it is called edaphic climax. Succession ends in edaphic climates where topography, soil, water, fire and other disturbances are such that a climatic climax cannot develop. Catastrophic climax. Climax vegetation vulnerable to a catastrophic event such as a wildfire. For example, in California chaparral vegetation is the final vegetation. The wildfire removes the mature vegetation and decomposes. A rapid development of herbaceous vegetation follows until the shrub dominance is reestablished. This is known as catastrophic climax. Disclimax. When the stable community which is not the climatic or edaphic climax for the given site is maintained by man or hid domestic animals, it is designated as disclimax or disturbance climax or anthropogenic subclimax, meaning man-generated. For example, grazing by stock may produce a desert community of bushes and cacti where the local climate actually would allow grassland to maintain itself. Preclimax and postclimax. In certain areas different climax communities develop under similar climatic conditions. If the community has life forms lower than those in the expected climatic climax, it is called preclimax. A community that has life forms higher than those in the expected climatic climax is postclimax. Preclimax strips develop in less moist and hotter areas, whereas postclimax strips develops in more moist and cooler areas than the surrounding climate. Open sidebar. Animal behavior study. Ethology. Ethology is the scientific study of animal behavior, including the behavior of humans. Ethologists seek to understand the ways in which animals interact with each other and their environment, how they communicate, how they learn, and how they adapt to changing circumstances. Ethology is an interdisciplinary field that draws upon biology, psychology, ecology, and other disciplines to explain animal behavior. Ethologists use a variety of methods to study animal behavior, including direct observation of animals in their natural habitats, experiments in controlled laboratory settings, and analysis of data from field studies. They also use a range of techniques to measure and record animal behavior, such as video recording, GPS tracking, and hormone analysis. The study of animal behavior can have many practical applications, such as improving animal welfare, managing wildlife populations, and understanding the behavior of humans in social and ecological contexts. Ethology has also contributed to our understanding of evolutionary theory and has helped to inform conservation efforts. Ethology is different from the other schools studying animal behavior like behaviorism. Ethology differs from behaviorism in several ways. While behaviorism focuses on observable behavior and the environmental stimuli that shape it, ethology takes a more holistic approach by also considering the internal factors that influence behavior, such as genetics, physiology, and development. Ethology also places more emphasis on studying animals in their natural habitats, rather than in artificial laboratory settings. Another key difference between ethology and behaviorism is their respective views on innate behavior. Behaviorists believe that all behavior is learned through environmental conditioning, whereas ethologists recognize that some behaviors are instinctive and innate, shaped by evolution over many generations. In addition, ethology places a greater emphasis on the study of social behavior, including communication, cooperation, and conflict resolution among individuals within a group. Ethologists also study animal cognition, including the ways in which animals perceive and process information about their environment. Overall, while behaviorism and ethology share some similarities in their study of animal behavior, they differ in their approaches, perspectives, and areas of focus. Ethology takes a more holistic, evolutionary, and ecological perspective, while behaviorism tends to focus on observable behavior and environmental conditioning. Behaviorism essay. Behaviorism is a school of psychology that focuses on observable behavior and how it is shaped by environmental stimuli. Behaviorism emerged in the early 20th century as a response to the introspective methods of psychology at the time, which focused on the study of subjective experience. Behaviorists argue that psychology should be a natural science, and that the study of behavior should be based on objective observations and experiments. One of the key principles of behaviorism is that behavior is shaped by the environment through a process of conditioning. Conditioning involves pairing a neutral stimulus with a meaningful stimulus to elicit a response. There are two types of conditioning: classical conditioning and operant conditioning. In classical conditioning, an unconditioned stimulus, such as food, is paired with a neutral stimulus, such as a bell, which eventually becomes a conditioned stimulus that elicits the same response, such as salivation. In operant conditioning, behavior is reinforced or punished to increase or decrease its occurrence. Behaviorists also believe that all behavior, including complex behaviors like language and cognition, could be explained by the principles of conditioning. They argued that even seemingly innate behaviors were actually the result of learning through conditioning. One of the most famous behaviorists was B.F. Skinner, who developed the theory of operant conditioning and applied it to a wide range of behaviors, from animal behavior to human language acquisition. Skinner believed that behavior was determined by its consequences, and that reinforcement was the most effective way to shape behavior. Critics of behaviorism argue that it oversimplifies human behavior and neglects the role of internal processes like thoughts, emotions, and motivation. They also argue that behaviorism fails to account for individual differences in behavior, such as personality and genetic factors. Despite these criticisms, behaviorism has had a significant impact on the field of psychology and has influenced many areas of research and practice, including education, clinical psychology, and animal behavior. Behavior is a reason to stimuli, sign stimuli, social releasers, ethigrams, supernormal stimuli explanation, each with multiple examples. Behavior is often a response to various types of stimuli in the environment, including sign stimuli, social releasers, and supernormal stimuli. Ethigrams are also used to describe patterns of behavior in a particular species. Below are explanations and examples of each of these types of stimuli and how they relate to behavior. Sign stimuli. These are specific stimuli in the environment that trigger a particular behavior in an animal. Sign stimuli are often associated with specific behaviors related to feeding, mating, or territorial defense. For example, the red belly of a male stickleback fish is a sign stimulus that triggers aggressive behavior in other males during mating season. Another example is the sound of a baby crying, which is a sign stimulus that triggers nurturing behavior in adult humans. Social releasers. These are stimuli that are associated with social interactions and can elicit particular behaviors. Social releasers are often used to facilitate communication and bonding between individuals of the same species. For example, in many bird species, the act of sharing food is a social releaser that promotes bonding between mates. Similarly, in primates, grooming behavior is a social releaser that facilitates social bonds. Ethigrams. Ethigrams are catalogs of patterns of behavior observed in a particular species. Ethigrams can be used to study behavior in a natural setting, to identify patterns of behavior, and to determine the purpose of each behavior. For example, an ethigram of a wolf pack might include behaviors such as howling, tail wagging, and submissive behavior, which can help researchers understand how the pack communicates and interacts. Supernormal stimuli. These are stimuli that are exaggerated or artificial, yet elicit a stronger response than the actual stimuli they represent. Supernormal stimuli can be used to enhance certain behaviors, but can also have negative consequences. For example, birds will often preferentially choose to incubate larger eggs, even if they are not their own, because they are responding to a supernormal stimulus. Another example is the use of sugar in processed foods, which can create a supernormal stimulus for the reward system in the brain and lead to overeating. In summary, behavior is often a response to specific types of stimuli in the environment, such as sign stimuli, social releasers, and supernormal stimuli. Ethigrams can be used to describe patterns of behavior, while understanding these types of stimuli can help researchers better understand how behavior is shaped and influenced in different species. Stimulus filtering essay with multiple examples. Stimulus filtering refers to the process by which an organism selectively attends to certain stimuli while ignoring others. This process is essential for survival as it enables an organism to focus on relevant information in the environment and filter out irrelevant or distracting stimuli. Below are explanations and examples of stimulus filtering. Sensory adaptation. This refers to the phenomenon of becoming desensitized to a stimulus over time. For example, when entering a room with a strong odor, the odor may be initially noticeable but eventually fades into the background as the brain adapts to the stimulus. Attentional filtering. This involves actively focusing on relevant stimuli while ignoring irrelevant ones. For example, when reading a book in a noisy cafe, the brain will filter out the noise and focus on the text. Habituation. This refers to the decrease in response to a stimulus after repeated exposure. For example, a person living near a train station may initially be bothered by the noise of passing trains, but over time, they may become habituated to the sound and no longer find it bothersome. Perceptual organization. This involves grouping stimuli based on their similarities and differences. For example, when looking at a group of letters, the brain will group them into individual words and sentences. Selective attention. This is the ability to attend to one stimulus while ignoring others. For example, when driving, a person may focus on the road ahead while ignoring other distractions such as billboards or pedestrians. Top-down processing. This refers to the use of prior knowledge and expectations to filter stimuli. For example, when reading a sentence with a missing word, the brain will use its knowledge of grammar and syntax to fill in the missing word. In summary, stimulus filtering is a complex process that involves a combination of sensory adaptation, attentional filtering, habituation, perceptual organization, selective attention, and top-down processing. The ability to filter stimuli is essential for survival and enables organisms to focus on relevant information in the environment while ignoring distractions. Concepts of fixed action patterns essay with many examples. Fixed action patterns FAPs are sequences of behavior that are triggered by specific stimuli and occur in a stereotyped and unvarying manner. These behaviors are typically innate, meaning they are genetically programmed, and are essential for survival and reproduction. Below are some examples of fixed action patterns in various animal species. Goose egg retrieval. When a goose sees an egg outside of its nest, it will roll the egg back to the nest with its beak. This behavior is triggered by the sight of an egg outside the nest and occurs in a stereotyped and unvarying manner. Gull chick pecking. When a herring gull chick sees a red spot on its parent's beak, it will instinctively peck at the spot, which triggers the parent to regurgitate food for the chick. Honeybee waggle dance. When a honeybee finds a food source, it will perform a waggle dance to communicate the location of the food to other members of the hive. The dance involves a series of steps and movements that are triggered by the location of the food source. Spider web spinning. When a spider feels the vibrations of prey on its web, it will spin a web around the prey to immobilize it. The behavior of spinning a web in response to prey vibrations is a fixed action pattern. Male stickleback fish aggression. During mating season, male stickleback fish will exhibit aggressive behavior towards other males with red bellies, which triggers a fixed action pattern of attack. Nest building in birds. Many bird species, such as the weaver bird, have innate fixed action patterns for building nests. The behavior is triggered by the presence of specific materials and occurs in a stereotyped and unvarying manner. In summary, fixed action patterns are innate behaviors that are triggered by specific stimuli and occur in a stereotyped and unvarying manner. These behaviors are essential for survival and reproduction and are found in a variety of animal species, from insects to birds to mammals. Understanding fixed action patterns can provide insight into the genetic and evolutionary basis of animal behavior. Innate releasing mechanisms essay with multiple examples. Innate releasing mechanisms, IRMs, are neural mechanisms that trigger fixed action patterns in response to specific stimuli. These mechanisms are hardwired into an organism's nervous system and are essential for survival and reproduction. Below are some examples of innate releasing mechanisms in various animal species. Gray-lag goose egg retrieval. When a gray-lag goose sees an egg outside of its nest, it will roll the egg back to the nest with its beak. This behavior is triggered by the sight of an egg outside the nest and occurs in a stereotyped and unvarying manner. The innate releasing mechanism for this behavior is the visual stimulus of an egg outside the nest. Gull chick pecking. When a herring gull chick sees a red spot on its parent's beak, it will instinctively peck at the spot, which triggers the parent to regurgitate food for the chick. The innate releasing mechanism for this behavior is the visual stimulus of a red spot on the parent's beak. Honeybee waggle dance. When a honeybee finds a food source, it will perform a waggle dance to communicate the location of the food to other members of the hive. The dance involves a series of steps and movements that are triggered by the location of the food source. The innate releasing mechanism for this behavior is the chemical and visual cues from the food source. Male stickleback fish aggression. During mating season, male stickleback fish will exhibit aggressive behavior towards other males with red bellies, which triggers a fixed action pattern of attack. The innate releasing mechanism for this behavior is the visual stimulus of a red belly on a male stickleback fish. Territorial marking in dogs. When a dog smells a new object or animal in its territory, it will mark the object with urine or feces. This behavior is triggered by the smell of the new object and is an innate releasing mechanism for territorial marking. This behavior is triggered by the smell of the new object and is an innate releasing mechanism for territorial marking. Web spinning in spiders. When a spider feels the vibrations of prey on its web, it will spin a web around the prey to immobilize it. The behavior of spinning a web in response to prey vibrations is an innate releasing mechanism. In summary, innate releasing mechanisms are neural mechanisms that trigger fixed action patterns in response to specific stimuli. These mechanisms are hardwired into an organism's nervous system and are essential for survival and reproduction. Understanding innate releasing mechanisms can provide insight into the genetic and evolutionary basis of animal behavior. Action-specific energy essay with multiple examples. Action-specific energy, ASE, is the concept that behaviors have a specific energy level that is appropriate for the task being performed. This energy level is thought to be controlled by specific neural mechanisms that are activated when the behavior is triggered by a specific stimulus. Below are some examples of action-specific energy in various animal species. Prey capture in cats. When a cat sees a mouse, it will crouch down and stalk the mouse before pouncing on it with a burst of energy. This burst of energy is the action-specific energy needed for catching the mouse. Hunting in wolves. When a pack of wolves is hunting prey, they will move at a steady pace until they are close to the prey, at which point they will sprint to catch it. The burst of energy needed to catch the prey is the action-specific energy. Mating behavior in birds. During mating season, male birds will perform elaborate courtship displays to attract females. These displays often involve complex movements and vocalizations that require a specific level of energy. Flight in birds. When a bird takes off from the ground, it must use a burst of energy to lift itself into the air. Once in flight, the bird will adjust its energy level depending on the task being performed, such as soaring or diving for prey. Swimming in fish. When a fish is swimming in open water, it will move at a steady pace. However, when it needs to catch prey or avoid a predator, it will use a burst of energy to move quickly in a specific direction. Fighting in lizards. When two male lizards are competing for territory or mating rights, they will engage in aggressive behavior that requires a specific level of energy. This behavior often involves biting, scratching, and grappling with each other. In summary, action-specific energy is the concept that behaviors have a specific energy level that is appropriate for the task being performed. This energy level is thought to be controlled by specific neural mechanisms that are activated when the behavior is triggered by a specific stimulus. Understanding action-specific energy can provide insight into the neural and physiological basis of animal behavior. Learning in detail with examples, types, experiments, and importance. Learning is the process by which an organism acquires new information, knowledge, or skills through experience, observation, or interaction with the environment. It is essential for survival and adaptation to changing environments. In this essay, we will discuss learning in detail, including examples, types, experiments, and importance. Types of learning. Classical conditioning. This type of learning occurs when a neutral stimulus becomes associated with a stimulus that elicits a response, resulting in a learned response to the neutral stimulus. Ivan Pavlov's famous experiment with dogs demonstrated classical conditioning, where the dogs learned to associate the sound of a bell with the presentation of food. Operant conditioning. This type of learning occurs when behavior is modified by the consequences that follow it. Positive reinforcement rewards, negative reinforcement, removal of aversive stimuli, punishment, and extinction are the principles of operant conditioning. B. F. Skinner's experiment with pigeons showed how operant conditioning can be used to shape behavior through rewards and punishments. Observational learning. This type of learning occurs when an individual learns by observing and imitating the behavior of others. For example, a child learns to tie their shoes by watching their parent do it. Insight learning. This type of learning occurs when an organism solves a problem by thinking creatively about the situation, rather than through trial and error. This type of learning was demonstrated by Wolfgang Kohler's experiments with chimpanzees, where the chimpanzees used insight to solve problems like reaching bananas that were out of their reach. Importance of learning. Learning is essential for survival and adaptation to changing environments. It helps individuals to adjust to new situations and acquire new skills and knowledge that improve their chances of survival. Learning also plays a significant role in the development of complex behaviors, including language, social interaction, and culture. It is also a fundamental process in education, allowing individuals to acquire knowledge and skills needed for success in various domains of life. Experiments on learning. Pavlov's classical conditioning experiment. In this experiment, Pavlov presented a sound, neutral stimulus followed by the presentation of food, stimulus that elicits a response. After repeated pairings, the dogs began to salivate at the sound of the bell, even in the absence of food. Skinner's operant conditioning experiment. Skinner used a Skinner box to study operant conditioning in pigeons. Pigeons were trained to peck a button in the box to receive food. Through reinforcement, the pigeons learned to peck the button consistently to receive the reward. Pandora's Bobo doll experiment. In this experiment, children observed an adult attacking a Bobo doll. Later, when the children were given the opportunity to play with the Bobo doll, they exhibited similar aggressive behavior towards the doll. This experiment demonstrated the power of observational learning in shaping behavior. In conclusion, learning is an essential process that enables organisms to adapt to changing environments, acquire new skills and knowledge, and develop complex behaviors. There are different types of learning, including classical conditioning, operant conditioning, observational learning, and insight learning. Understanding the different types of learning, their mechanisms, and importance can help us develop effective teaching and learning strategies in various domains of life. 2 halves. Imprinting in detail with many examples. Imprinting is a type of learning that occurs during a critical period in an organism's development, typically shortly after birth or hatching, and is characterized by the formation of an irreversible attachment to a specific object, individual, or stimulus. In this essay, we will discuss imprinting in detail, including examples, mechanisms, and significance. Mechanisms of imprinting. Imprinting is a rapid form of learning that occurs during a critical period, typically shortly after birth or hatching. During this period, the organism is particularly sensitive to specific stimuli and will form an attachment to the first object, individual, or stimulus it encounters. This attachment is usually irreversible and can have lasting effects on an organism's behavior and development. The mechanism of imprinting is still not fully understood, but research suggests that it involves both genetic and environmental factors. Hormones such as oxytocin and vasopressin have been found to play a role in imprinting behavior, as well as neural mechanisms in the brain that are involved in processing social and emotional information. Examples of imprinting. Konrad Lorenz in geese. Konrad Lorenz was a zoologist who studied animal behavior, particularly imprinting in geese. In one of his famous experiments, he hatched goose eggs and immediately placed them in an incubator. The first moving object that the goslings saw when they hatched was Lorenz, and they imprinted on him, following him around as if he were their mother. Filial imprinting in birds. Filial imprinting is a type of imprinting that occurs between a bird and its parent. The chick forms an attachment to its parent, which helps it to learn important social and survival behaviors. For example, chicks that imprint on their parents will learn to recognize their calls, which are important for finding each other and foraging for food. Sexual imprinting in humans. Sexual imprinting is a type of imprinting that occurs in humans, where an individual forms a preference for certain physical traits or characteristics in a partner based on early experiences during a critical period. For example, individuals may be more attracted to people who resemble their opposite sex parent or caregivers. Significance of imprinting. Imprinting is important for the development of social and survival behaviors in animals, and can have lasting effects on an organism's behavior and development. For example, imprinting on a specific type of mate can influence an individual's reproductive success, while imprinting on a particular predator can help an organism to avoid predation. Imprinting can also be used to develop animal models for research, as well as for conservation efforts, such as reintroduction programs for endangered species. In conclusion, imprinting is a type of learning that occurs during a critical period in an organism's development, characterized by the formation of an irreversible attachment to a specific object, individual, or stimulus. Imprinting is important for the development of social and survival behaviors in animals, and can have lasting effects on an organism's behavior and development. Studying imprinting can provide insights into the mechanisms of learning, social behavior, and evolutionary adaptation in animals. General factors of motivation. Motivation is a driving force that initiates, directs, and sustains behavior towards achieving a goal. There are several factors that contribute to motivation, including biological factors. These include internal physiological drives, such as hunger, thirst, and sex, which are necessary for survival and play a crucial role in motivating behavior. Psychological factors. These include cognitive processes, such as beliefs, attitudes, and emotions, which can influence an individual's motivation to engage in certain behaviors. Social factors. These include social norms, cultural values, and peer pressure, which can influence an individual's motivation to conform to group expectations and engage in certain behaviors. Environmental factors. These include external cues, such as rewards, punishments, and feedback, which can influence an individual's motivation to engage in certain behaviors. Personal factors. These include individual differences, such as personality traits, self-esteem, and self-efficacy, which can influence an individual's motivation to pursue goals and engage in certain behaviors. Situational factors. These include the context in which behavior occurs, such as time constraints, resource availability, and task complexity, which can influence an individual's motivation to engage in certain behaviors. All of these factors can interact with each other to influence an individual's motivation to engage in a particular behavior. Understanding the different factors that contribute to motivation can help individuals and organizations to design effective strategies for increasing motivation and achieving goals. General factors in motivation. Motivation is a complex process that involves a range of different factors that interact with each other. Some of the general factors that influence motivation include needs. Motivation is often driven by basic physiological and psychological needs, such as hunger, thirst, safety, and social belongingness. Goals. Having clear and specific goals can help to provide direction and focus, and can increase motivation to work towards achieving those goals. Values. Personal values and beliefs can influence motivation by shaping the importance and relevance of specific goals and tasks. Self-efficacy. A person's belief in their ability to successfully complete a task or achieve a goal can have a significant impact on their motivation levels. Rewards and incentives. The prospect of receiving rewards, recognition, or other incentives can increase motivation to complete a task or achieve a goal. Feedback and support. Positive feedback and support from others can increase motivation by providing a sense of accomplishment, as well as social recognition and validation. Emotional state. Emotions such as enthusiasm, excitement, and joy can increase motivation, while negative emotions such as fear, stress, and anxiety can decrease motivation. Individual differences. Different individuals may be motivated by different factors, such as achievement, power, affiliation, or autonomy. Environment. The physical and social environment can impact motivation, such as the availability of resources, the level of competition, and the social norms and expectations. Overall, motivation is a complex and multifaceted process that is influenced by a variety of factors. Understanding these factors can help individuals and organizations to design effective strategies for increasing motivation and achieving goals. Studies of motivation in guppies in detail with examples. Guppies, a species of small freshwater fish, have been studied extensively as a model organism to understand motivation and decision-making in animals. Here are a few examples of studies on guppies and motivation. Predator avoidance. One study examined how guppies respond to the presence of predators in their environment. The researchers found that guppies exhibited different levels of motivation to avoid predators depending on their previous exposure to predators. Guppies that had never encountered predators were less motivated to avoid them compared to guppies that had experienced predator attacks in the past. This suggests that guppies are able to learn from experience and adjust their motivation levels accordingly. Mate choice. Guppies are known for their elaborate courtship displays, and studies have shown that female guppies are more likely to mate with males that exhibit brighter and more attractive coloration. In one study, researchers found that female guppies were more motivated to approach and mate with males that had more colorful fins, suggesting that mate choice behavior in guppies is driven by motivation. Forward behavior. Guppies are opportunistic feeders that consume a wide range of food sources, including algae, small invertebrates, and even their own offspring. One study found that guppies were more motivated to feed on high-quality food sources that provided more energy per unit than low-quality food sources. The researchers also found that guppies were more motivated to feed on novel food sources, suggesting that exploration and novelty-seeking behavior can drive motivation in guppies. Social behavior. Guppies are social animals that exhibit a range of social behaviors, including shoaling and aggression. One study examined how social context influences motivation to shoal in guppies. The researchers found that guppies were more motivated to shoal in the presence of other guppies than when they were alone, suggesting that social interaction can drive motivation in guppies. Overall, studies on guppies have provided valuable insights into the factors that influence motivation and decision-making in animals. By understanding the underlying mechanisms of motivation in guppies and other model organisms, researchers can gain a better understanding of how motivation operates in humans and other animals, and develop more effective strategies for promoting motivation and goal-directed behavior. Studies of motivation in guppies. Studies of motivation in guppies have revealed a great deal about the factors that drive behavior in these small freshwater fish. Here are some examples of studies on motivation in guppies. Predation risk. Guppies are known to be highly responsive to the presence of predators, and studies have shown that the motivation to avoid predators is influenced by factors such as the size and type of predator, the level of predation risk, and the social context. For example, one study found that guppies were more motivated to avoid large predators than small ones, and that the presence of other guppies increased the motivation to avoid predators. Reproduction. Guppies exhibit a range of reproductive behaviors, including mate choice, courtship displays, and parental care. Studies have shown that the motivation to engage in these behaviors is influenced by factors such as the sex ratio of the population, the availability of resources, and the quality of potential mates. For example, one study found that female guppies were more motivated to mate with males that had more colorful and attractive fins, while males were more motivated to mate with females that were more fecund. Feeding behavior. Guppies are opportunistic feeders that consume a variety of food sources, including algae, invertebrates, and even their own offspring. Studies have shown that the motivation to feed is influenced by factors such as the quality and quantity of available food, the presence of competitors, and the nutritional needs of the individual. For example, one study found that guppies were more motivated to feed on high-quality food sources that provided more energy per unit than low-quality food sources, while another study found that guppies were more motivated to feed on novel food sources. Social behavior. Guppies are social animals that exhibit a range of social behaviors, including shoaling, dominance, and aggression. Studies have shown that the motivation to engage in these behaviors is influenced by factors such as the size and composition of the shoal, the level of competition, and the availability of resources. For example, one study found that guppies were more motivated to shoal in the presence of other guppies, and that the motivation to shoal was influenced by the social status of the individual. Overall, studies of motivation in guppies have provided valuable insights into the factors that drive behavior in animals, and have helped to illuminate the underlying mechanisms of motivation in a wide range of contexts. Mating systems. Mating systems refer to the various ways in which individuals of a species mate and reproduce. There are several different types of mating systems, each of which is characterized by different patterns of mating behavior and social organization. Here are some examples. Monogamy. In monogamous mating systems, individuals form long-term pair bonds with a single mate. Both partners contribute to parenting and care for the offspring. Monogamy is relatively rare in animals but is found in some species of birds, mammals, and even fish. Polygyny. In polygynous mating systems, males mate with multiple females, often in the context of a harem. The male defends his territory or group of females from other males, and typically provides little or no parental care. Polygyny is found in many mammals, such as gorillas and deer, as well as in some birds, fish, and insects. Polyandry. In polyandrous mating systems, females mate with multiple males and males provide most or all of the parental care. Polyandry is relatively rare in animals but is found in some species of birds, insects, and fish. Promiscuity. In promiscuous mating systems, both males and females mate with multiple partners and there's little or no social organization around mating. Promiscuity is found in many species of insects and some mammals, such as rodents and bats. The type of mating system a species employs is often influenced by factors such as sexual selection, resource availability, and social structure. Understanding the different mating systems used by animals can provide insights into the evolution of reproductive behavior and social organization. Parental investment. Parental investment refers to the time, effort, and resources that parents devote to raising their offspring. This investment can take many forms, including providing food, shelter, protection, and teaching skills necessary for survival. Parental investment is a fundamental aspect of reproductive behavior, and it can have important implications for the survival and reproductive success of offspring. In general, the level of parental investment exhibited by a species is influenced by a range of factors, including the level of care required by the offspring, the availability of resources, and the level of predation risk. For example, species with highly dependent offspring, such as humans and some birds, tend to exhibit high levels of parental investment, while species with more independent offspring, such as reptiles and some insects, tend to exhibit lower levels of parental investment. Parental investment can also vary within a species depending on factors such as sex and social status. In many species, females invest more heavily in parental care than males, due in part to the fact that females often bear a greater burden of reproduction, such as carrying and nourishing offspring during pregnancy. In some species, such as seahorses and certain species of birds, males are the primary caregivers and invest more heavily in parental care than females. Overall, parental investment is a critical aspect of reproductive behavior, and it can have important implications for the survival and reproductive success of offspring. Understanding the factors that influence parental investment can help us to better understand the evolution of reproductive strategies and the dynamics of parent-offspring relationships. Types of parental investment and multiple examples. There are two main types of parental investment, maternal investment and paternal investment. Maternal investment. This refers to the resources, care, and effort that a mother provides to her offspring. Some examples of maternal investment include gestation and birth. Female mammals carry their young during pregnancy and give birth to live offspring. This is a significant investment of time and energy. Lactation. After birth, female mammals typically nurse their young with milk produced from their own bodies. This provides important nutrients and immune factors for the offspring. Protection. Mothers may also provide protection for their offspring, such as hiding them from predators, defending them from other members of the same species, or even physically carrying them to safety. Teaching. In some species, mothers may teach their offspring important skills, such as how to hunt, forage, or avoid danger. Paternal investment. This refers to the resources, care, and effort that a father provides to his offspring. Paternal investment is less common than maternal investment, but it is still observed in many species. Some examples of paternal investment include Courtship and mating. Male animals often invest significant resources in courtship and mating behavior, including the construction of elaborate nests, the production of mating calls, or the display of colorful plumage. Protection. Some male animals provide protection for their offspring, such as by defending the nest or territory from predators. Food provisioning. In some species, male animals may provide food for their offspring, such as by hunting and bringing back prey items. Caregiving. In some species, male animals may also provide direct care for their offspring, such as by helping to incubate eggs or by carrying and grooming young. It is important to note that the degree of parental investment can vary widely within and between species. Some species may exhibit high levels of maternal investment and low levels of paternal investment, while others may exhibit the opposite pattern. The level of parental investment is influenced by a wide range of factors, including the ecology, social structure, and life history of the species in question. Reproductive success in detail with types and multiple examples essay. Reproductive success is the measure of an individual's or a population's ability to produce offspring that survive and reproduce themselves. It is a key concept in evolutionary biology, as natural selection acts on traits that enhance reproductive success. Reproductive success can be influenced by a variety of factors, including mate choice, parental investment, competition for resources, and genetic variation. There are several types of reproductive success. Direct reproductive success. This refers to an individual's ability to produce viable offspring that survive to reproductive age. Direct reproductive success can be influenced by factors such as mate choice, sexual behavior, and parental care. For example, male peacocks with elaborate tails are more likely to attract mates and have higher reproductive success than males with less elaborate tails. Indirect reproductive success. This refers to an individual's ability to enhance the reproductive success of genetically related individuals, such as siblings or offspring. Indirect reproductive success can be influenced by factors such as kin selection, parental investment, and altruistic behavior. For example, female lions that join forces to care for their cubs are more likely to have their offspring survive to reproductive age. Lifetime reproductive success. This refers to the total number of viable offspring produced by an individual over its lifetime. Lifetime reproductive success can be influenced by a wide range of factors, including mate choice, parental care, competition for resources, and genetic variation. For example, female sea turtles that lay more eggs over their lifetime are more likely to have their genes passed on to future generations. There are also several factors that can influence reproductive success. Mate choice. Individuals may choose mates based on a variety of traits, including physical characteristics, behavioral displays, and genetic compatibility. Mate choice can have important implications for reproductive success, as individuals that choose high-quality mates may produce more viable offspring. Parental investment. The level of parental investment can have a significant impact on reproductive success. Individuals that invest more time and resources in caring for their offspring may produce more viable offspring that survive to reproductive age. Resource availability. The availability of resources, such as food, water, and shelter, can also have a significant impact on reproductive success. Individuals that have access to high-quality resources may produce more viable offspring that survive to reproductive age. Genetic variation. Genetic variation can influence reproductive success by affecting the ability of individuals to adapt to changing environmental conditions, resist disease and predation, and produce viable offspring. Examples of reproductive success can be seen in many species. For example, male peacocks with elaborate tails have higher reproductive success than males with less elaborate tails, as their displays are more attractive to females. Female lions that join forces to care for their cubs have higher reproductive success than females that raise their cubs alone, as their cubs are more likely to survive to reproductive age. Female sea turtles that lay more eggs over their lifetime have higher reproductive success than females that lay fewer eggs, as their genes are more likely to be passed on to future generations. In conclusion, reproductive success is a key concept in evolutionary biology, and it can be influenced by a wide range of factors, including mate choice, parental investment, resource availability, and genetic variation. By understanding the factors that influence reproductive success, we can gain insights into the evolution of reproductive strategies and the dynamics of parent-offspring relationships in different species. Conflict behavior in detail in ethology with multiple examples. Conflict behavior, also known as agonistic behavior, refers to any behavior that occurs between animals that is associated with conflict, competition, or aggression. Agonistic behavior can take many different forms, ranging from displays of dominance to physical fighting. It is an important aspect of animal behavior that plays a key role in social interactions and can have important implications for reproductive success, resource acquisition, and survival. There are several types of agonistic behavior. Threat displays. These are behaviors that are designed to intimidate or deter potential opponents. Examples include displays of size, strength, or dominance, vocalizations, and posturing. Fighting. This involves physical aggression between animals. Fighting can occur over resources such as food, territory, or mates. The outcome of fights can be determined by a variety of factors, including size, strength, and experience. Submission. This involves an animal showing deference or surrender to a dominant animal. Submission can be expressed through behaviors such as cowering, avoidance, or the presentation of vulnerable body parts. Territorial behavior. This refers to behaviors that are designed to defend a specific area or territory from intrusion by other animals. Territorial behavior can include vocalizations, scent marking, and physical aggression. Agonistic behavior can have important implications for reproductive success, as it can affect an animal's ability to acquire and defend resources, including mates. For example, male elk engage in physical fights during the breeding season to establish dominance and access to females. Similarly, male lions defend their territories from other males to ensure access to mates and resources. Agonistic behavior can also have important implications for survival. For example, in some species of birds, individuals engage in threat displays to deter predators from approaching their nests. In other species, individuals engage in physical fights to defend themselves from predators or to acquire access to food resources. Overall, conflict behavior is an important aspect of animal behavior that plays a key role in social interactions and can have important implications for reproductive success, resource acquisition, and survival. By studying the various types of agonistic behavior and their functions, researchers can gain insights into the complex dynamics of social interactions in different species. Stress displacement activities in detail with multiple examples. Stress displacement activities in detail with multiple examples. Stress displacement activities, also known as redirected behaviors or displacement behaviors, are a type of behavior that occurs in response to stress or conflict. These behaviors are often expressed in situations where an animal is unable to perform its normal behavioral repertoire, and can include behaviors such as grooming, scratching, or yawning. Stress displacement activities are thought to arise as a result of conflicting motivations, where an animal is torn between two or more competing goals. For example, an animal may be motivated to approach a potential mate, but at the same time be afraid of a nearby predator. The conflict between these two motivations can result in stress and anxiety, which may manifest as a displacement behavior. Examples of stress displacement activities in animals include grooming. This is a common displacement behavior in many animals, including primates, rodents, and birds. Grooming can help to reduce stress and anxiety, and may also serve to maintain social bonds. Scratching. Like grooming, scratching is another common displacement behavior that can help to reduce stress and anxiety. Yawning. Yawning is a well-known displacement behavior in many animals, including humans, and is thought to be a response to stress or fatigue. Nest building. Some birds engage in displacement behaviors such as nest building when faced with stressful situations. Self-directed behaviors. Some animals engage in self-directed behaviors, such as biting or licking their own limbs, when faced with stress or anxiety. Stress displacement activities are thought to be an adaptive response to the challenges of living in a complex and unpredictable environment. By providing an outlet for stress and anxiety, these behaviors may help animals to cope with conflicting motivations and maintain their overall well-being. Overall, stress displacement activities are an important aspect of animal behavior that can provide insights into the complex ways in which animals cope with stress and conflict. By studying these behaviors, researchers can gain a better understanding of the mechanisms that underlie stress and anxiety in animals, and develop new strategies for promoting animal welfare and well-being. Ritualization in detail with multiple examples. Ritualization is a process by which behaviors become exaggerated, simplified, and stereotyped over time, often as a result of sexual selection. Ritualization is a process by which behaviors become exaggerated, simplified, and stereotyped over time, often as a result of sexual selection. This process can result in the development of distinctive signals or displays that are used in communication between members of a species. One of the most well-known examples of ritualization is the courtship behavior of the gray-lag goose. During courtship, the male goose will extend his neck and head, hold his wings outstretched, and make a series of honking calls while circling the female. This behavior has become highly ritualized over time, and is thought to have evolved through sexual selection, with females preferring males that display these exaggerated behaviors. Other examples of ritualized behaviors in animals include the courtship dance of the blue-footed booby. During courtship, the male blue-footed booby will perform a distinctive dance in which he raises and lowers his wings, lifts his feet, and points his beak skyward. This display is thought to have evolved as a way for males to attract females, and has become highly ritualized over time. The threat display of the frilled lizard. When threatened, the frilled lizard will spread its frill and open its mouth wide, displaying its bright colors and making loud hissing noises. This behavior is highly ritualized, and is thought to have evolved as a way to deter predators. The tail-wagging display of the dog. Dogs will often wag their tails when interacting with humans or other dogs. This behavior is highly ritualized, and is thought to have evolved as a way to communicate emotional states, such as happiness or excitement. The courtship display of the peacock. Male peacocks will display their elaborate plumage and fan out their tail feathers in a distinctive courtship display. This behavior has become highly ritualized over time, and is thought to have evolved as a way for males to attract females. Ritualization is an important process in the evolution of animal behavior, as it can result in the development of distinctive signals or displays that are used in communication between members of a species. By studying these behaviors, researchers can gain insights into the complex ways in which animals communicate and interact with one another, and develop a better understanding of the mechanisms that underlie sexual selection and other forms of natural selection. Instinctive behavior in detail with examples. Instinctive behavior, also known as innate behavior, is behavior that is genetically programmed and does not require learning. These behaviors are typically expressed in response to specific environmental stimuli and are important for an organism's survival and reproduction. Here are some examples of instinctive behavior in animals. Nest building in birds. Many bird species have an innate ability to build nests using specific materials and techniques, even without prior experience or observation. For example, the weaver bird is known for its intricate nests made of woven grasses, which it constructs using a highly specific series of movements. Migration in birds and fish. Many species of birds and fish have an innate ability to navigate across vast distances in order to reach specific breeding or feeding grounds. This behavior is typically triggered by environmental cues such as changes in temperature or day length. Territorial behavior in animals. Many animals, including birds, mammals, and reptiles, exhibit territorial behavior in order to defend a specific area for mating or feeding. This behavior is often highly ritualized and involves specific displays or vocalizations to signal ownership of a territory. Reflexes in animals. Many animals have innate reflexes, such as the knee-jerk reflex in humans, which are automatic and involuntary responses to specific stimuli. These reflexes are important for rapid responses to potentially dangerous situations. Aggressive behavior in animals. Many animals, particularly males, exhibit innate aggressive behavior in order to compete for resources such as mates or territory. This behavior is often highly ritualized and may involve specific displays or physical combat. Overall, instinctive behavior is a critical component of an organism's survival and reproduction, allowing animals to quickly respond to environmental stimuli without the need for prior learning or experience. By studying these behaviors, researchers can gain insights into the complex ways in which animals interact with their environments and evolve over time. Reflex action in detail with multiple examples. Reflex action, also known as a reflex arc, is an automatic, involuntary response to a specific stimulus. This response occurs without conscious thought or decision-making, and is mediated by the nervous system. Here are some examples of reflex actions in humans. The knee-jerk reflex. The knee-jerk reflex is a common reflex action in humans, which occurs when the patellar tendon below the kneecap is stabbed with a hammer. This reflex causes the quadriceps muscle in the thigh to contract, which in turn causes the leg to kick out involuntarily. The gag reflex. The gag reflex is a protective reflex action that occurs when an object comes into contact with the back of the throat. This reflex causes the muscles of the pharynx to contract, which can help to prevent choking. The eye blink reflex. The eye blink reflex is a protective reflex action that occurs when an object comes too close to the eye. This reflex causes the eyelids to close automatically, which can help to protect the eye from potential damage. The withdrawal reflex. The withdrawal reflex is a common reflex action in response to pain. This reflex causes the muscles to contract and withdraw the affected body part away from the source of the pain. For example, if you accidentally touch a hot stove, your hand will automatically withdraw from the heat. The startle reflex. The startle reflex is a common reflex action in response to sudden loud noises or unexpected movements. This reflex causes the muscles to contract and the body to flinch or jump involuntarily. Overall, reflex actions are an important part of the nervous system's response to external stimuli, allowing the body to rapidly respond to potential threats or dangers. By studying these reflexes, researchers can gain insights into the complex ways in which the nervous system processes and responds to sensory information. Neural basis of sleep and arousal in detail with multiple examples. The neural basis of sleep and arousal is a complex and highly regulated process involving many different brain regions and neurotransmitters. Here are some key examples of the neural basis of sleep and arousal. The hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a small but highly important region of the brain that plays a key role in regulating sleep and arousal. The hypothalamus contains a cluster of cells known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, which acts as the body's internal clock and helps to regulate the sleep-wake cycle. The hypothalamus also regulates the release of hormones that are involved in promoting sleep and arousal, including melatonin and cortisol. The reticular activating system. The reticular activating system, RAS, is a network of neurons that runs through the core of the brainstem and is responsible for regulating wakefulness and arousal. The RAS receives input from sensory systems throughout the body and sends signals to other regions of the brain to help maintain a state of wakefulness. The RAS is also thought to play a role in the regulation of REM sleep, a stage of sleep characterized by rapid eye movements and vivid dreams. The neurotransmitter systems. There are several different neurotransmitter systems in the brain that are involved in regulating sleep and arousal. For example, the neurotransmitter serotonin is thought to play a key role in promoting wakefulness and regulating the sleep-wake cycle. Drugs that increase serotonin levels, such as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, can lead to increased wakefulness and reduced sleep. Similarly, the neurotransmitter acetylcholine is also important for promoting wakefulness and alertness, while the neurotransmitter gamma-aminobutyric acid, GABA, is important for promoting sleep. Circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythms are a natural, internal process that regulates the sleep-wake cycle in most living organisms. These rhythms are controlled by the SCN in the hypothalamus, which helps to synchronize the body's internal clock with external cues such as light and temperature. Disruptions to circadian rhythms, such as those caused by jet lag or shift work, can lead to sleep disturbances and other health problems. Overall, the neural basis of sleep and arousal is a complex and multifaceted process involving many different regions of the brain and neurotransmitters. By understanding the underlying neural mechanisms of sleep and arousal, researchers can develop new treatments for sleep disorders and other conditions that affect the sleep-wake cycle. Neural basis of learning in detail. The neural basis of learning is a complex process involving many different regions of the brain and various neurotransmitters. Here are some key examples of the neural basis of learning. The hippocampus. The hippocampus is a region of the brain that is involved in the formation and consolidation of memories. Studies have shown that damage to the hippocampus can impair learning and memory formation. The hippocampus receives inputs from other regions of the brain, including the cortex and the amygdala, and is thought to be particularly important for the formation of spatial memories. Long-term potentiation, LTP. LTP is a process that occurs in the synapses between neurons in response to repeated stimulation. During LTP, the strength of the synapse is increased, allowing for more efficient communication between neurons. LTP is thought to be an important mechanism underlying learning and memory formation. Neurotransmitter systems. Several different neurotransmitter systems in the brain are involved in learning and memory. For example, the neurotransmitter dopamine is important for reinforcing behaviors that lead to rewards, while the neurotransmitter acetylcholine is important for enhancing attention and memory formation. The neurotransmitter glutamate is also important for LTP and synaptic plasticity. Neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the ability of the brain to change and adapt in response to experience. This can occur at both the synaptic level, i.e., changes in the strength of synapses between neurons, and the structural level, i.e., changes in the number or structure of neurons. Neuroplasticity is an important mechanism underlying learning and memory, as it allows the brain to reorganize and adapt to new information. Neural networks. Learning is thought to involve the formation and strengthening of neural networks, or groups of neurons that are connected in specific ways. These networks can be thought of as the building blocks of complex behaviors and cognitive processes, and they are thought to be important for the formation and retrieval of memories. Overall, the neural basis of learning is a complex process involving many different regions of the brain and neurotransmitter systems. By understanding the underlying neural mechanisms of learning, researchers can develop new treatments for cognitive disorders and other conditions that affect learning and memory. Neural basis of memory. The neural basis of memory involves complex interactions between various regions of the brain, neurotransmitter systems, and neuroplasticity. Here are some key examples of the neural basis of memory. The hippocampus. The hippocampus is a region of the brain that plays a critical role in the formation and consolidation of memories. Studies have shown that damage to the hippocampus can impair the ability to form new memories, while stimulation of the hippocampus can enhance memory retrieval. The hippocampus is also thought to be particularly important for the formation of spatial memories. Long-term potentiation, LTP. LTP is a process that occurs in the synapses between neurons in response to repeated stimulation. During LTP, the strength of the synapse is increased, allowing for more efficient communication between neurons. LTP is thought to be an important mechanism underlying memory formation and consolidation. Neurotransmitter systems. Several different neurotransmitter systems in the brain are involved in memory formation and consolidation. For example, the neurotransmitter acetylcholine is important for enhancing attention and memory formation, while the neurotransmitter dopamine is important for reinforcing behaviors that lead to rewards. The neurotransmitter glutamate is also important for LTP and synaptic plasticity. Neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the ability of the brain to change and adapt in response to experience. This can occur at both the synaptic level, i.e., changes in the strength of synapses between neurons, and the structural level, i.e., changes in the number or structure of neurons. Neuroplasticity is an important mechanism underlying memory, as it allows the brain to reorganize and adapt to new information. Neural networks. Memory is thought to involve the formation and strengthening of neural networks, or groups of neurons that are connected in specific ways. These networks can be thought of as the building blocks of complex memories and cognitive processes. Overall, the neural basis of memory is a complex process involving many different regions of the brain and neurotransmitter systems. By understanding the underlying neural mechanisms of memory, researchers can develop new treatments for cognitive disorders and other conditions that affect memory. Neural basis of cognition in detail. Why? The neural basis of cognition refers to the underlying mechanisms by which the brain processes and integrates sensory information, forms perceptions, and generates thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It involves complex interactions between various regions of the brain, neurotransmitter systems, and neuroplasticity. Here are some key examples of the neural basis of cognition. Sensory processing. Sensory information from the environment is received by sensory neurons and transmitted to specific regions of the brain that are responsible for processing that particular type of information. For example, visual information is processed in the occipital lobe of the brain, while auditory information is processed in the temporal lobe. The processing of sensory information involves the integration of information from multiple sources, as well as the filtering of irrelevant information. Attention. Attention refers to the ability to selectively focus on certain aspects of the environment while ignoring others. Attention is controlled by several different regions of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex and parietal cortex. These regions are involved in the selection and maintenance of attention, as well as the filtering of irrelevant information. Working memory. Working memory refers to the ability to hold and manipulate information over short periods of time. Working memory is supported by several different regions of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex and the parietal cortex. These regions are involved in the storage and manipulation of information, as well as the updating of information in working memory. Long-term memory. Long-term memory refers to the storage and retrieval of information over longer periods of time. Long-term memory is supported by several different regions of the brain, including the hippocampus and the cortex. The hippocampus is particularly important for the formation and consolidation of new memories, while the cortex is involved in the retrieval and integration of memories. Executive functions. Executive functions refer to a set of cognitive processes that are involved in goal-directed behavior, including planning, decision-making, and self-control. Executive functions are supported by several different regions of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex and the basal ganglia. Overall, the neural basis of cognition is a complex process involving many different regions of the brain and neurotransmitter systems. By understanding the underlying neural mechanisms of cognition, researchers can develop new treatments for cognitive disorders and other conditions that affect cognition. Neural basis of sleep and arousal. The neural basis of sleep and arousal refers to the underlying mechanisms by which the brain controls the sleep-wake cycle, as well as transitions between states of wakefulness and sleep. The sleep-wake cycle is regulated by several different regions of the brain, including the hypothalamus, brainstem, and thalamus, as well as various neurotransmitter systems, such as the monoaminergic and cholinergic systems. Here are some key examples of the neural basis of sleep and arousal. The hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a region of the brain that plays a critical role in the regulation of the sleep-wake cycle. It contains several nuclei that are involved in the control of arousal and sleep, including the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, which is the master circadian pacemaker that regulates the timing of sleep and wakefulness. The brainstem. The brainstem is another region of the brain that is involved in the regulation of the sleep-wake cycle. It contains several nuclei that are responsible for the production of neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and acetylcholine, which play important roles in the control of arousal and sleep. The thalamus. The thalamus is a region of the brain that acts as a relay center for sensory information. It is also involved in the regulation of the sleep-wake cycle, and plays a key role in the transmission of sensory information during wakefulness and the suppression of sensory information during sleep. The monoaminergic system. The monoaminergic system, which includes the neurotransmitters dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, is involved in the regulation of arousal and wakefulness. These neurotransmitters are released by neurons in the brainstem and project to various regions of the brain, including the cortex and the thalamus, where they modulate sensory processing and other cognitive functions. The cholinergic system. The cholinergic system, which uses the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, is also involved in the regulation of the sleep-wake cycle. Acetylcholine is released by neurons in the brainstem and projects to various regions of the brain, including the cortex and the thalamus, where it is involved in the modulation of attention, learning, and memory. Overall, the neural basis of sleep and arousal involves complex interactions between multiple regions of the brain and neurotransmitter systems. By understanding the underlying neural mechanisms of sleep and arousal, researchers can develop new treatments for sleep disorders and other conditions that affect the sleep-wake cycle. Biological clocks in detail, types and explanation with multiple examples. Biological clocks are internal mechanisms that control the timing of various physiological and behavioral processes in living organisms. These clocks are driven by endogenous rhythms that are generated by molecular and neural networks in the body, and are synchronized to environmental cues such as light and temperature. There are several types of biological clocks that operate at different levels of organization, ranging from individual cells to whole organisms. Here are some examples of biological clocks and their functions. Circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythms are the most well-known type of biological clock, and are found in most organisms, including humans. These rhythms have a cycle of approximately 24 hours and are involved in the regulation of many physiological processes, such as sleep-wake cycles, hormone secretion, and metabolism. The master circadian clock in mammals is located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, of the hypothalamus, which receives input from light-sensitive cells in the retina and synchronizes the body's internal rhythms to the 24-hour day. Ultradian rhythms. Ultradian rhythms have a shorter cycle than circadian rhythms, typically ranging from a few minutes to a few hours. These rhythms are involved in the regulation of various physiological processes, such as heart rate, breathing, and digestion. Infraradian rhythms. Infraradian rhythms have a longer cycle than circadian rhythms, ranging from a few days to several months. Examples of infraradian rhythms include the menstrual cycle in humans and the migration patterns of some animals. Entrainment. Entrainment refers to the process by which biological clocks are synchronized to environmental cues, such as light and temperature. For example, the circadian clock is entrained by light-dark cycles, and the timing of the onset of sleep is influenced by the body's exposure to light. Molecular clocks. Molecular clocks are cellular mechanisms that regulate the timing of various cellular processes, such as DNA replication and protein synthesis. These clocks are driven by the expression of clock genes, which are regulated by feedback loops involving proteins that activate or inhibit gene expression. Overall, biological clocks are essential for the regulation of many physiological processes in living organisms, and their disruption can lead to various health problems, such as sleep disorders and metabolic diseases. Understanding the mechanisms of biological clocks is important for the development of new treatments for these conditions, as well as for optimizing performance and productivity in various settings, such as shift work and space travel. Adaptiveness of behavior in detail. Adaptiveness of behavior refers to how well a particular behavior allows an organism to survive and reproduce in its environment. Behaviors that are adaptive are more likely to be passed on to future generations, while behaviors that are maladaptive are less likely to be passed on. Adaptive behavior can be observed across various levels of organization, ranging from individual cells to whole organisms. Here are some examples of adaptive behavior. Cellular adaptation. Cells are capable of adapting to various environmental conditions, such as changes in pH, temperature, and nutrient availability. For example, some bacteria can switch between different metabolic pathways depending on the availability of nutrients in their environment. Behavioral adaptation. Animals can exhibit various behaviors that allow them to survive and reproduce in their environment. For example, birds that migrate to warmer climates during the winter are able to access more food resources and avoid harsh weather conditions, which increases their chances of survival and reproduction. Social adaptation. Many animals live in social groups and exhibit behaviors that allow them to cooperate and communicate with each other. For example, bees exhibit complex communication behaviors that allow them to share information about the location of food sources and the status of the hive. Evolutionary adaptation. Over time, populations of organisms can evolve adaptations that allow them to better survive and reproduce in their environment. For example, the evolution of feathers in birds allowed them to fly, which opened up new ecological niches and opportunities for survival and reproduction. The adaptiveness of behavior is not always straightforward, as the environment can change rapidly and unpredictably, and behaviors that were once adaptive can become maladaptive. In addition, what is adaptive in one environment may not be adaptive in another, so behaviors must be considered in their specific ecological context. Overall, the adaptiveness of behavior is a key concept in evolutionary biology and is essential for understanding how organisms interact with their environment and evolve over time. J.P. Scott's categories of behavior in detail with multiple examples and explanation. J.P. Scott's categories of behavior